everyone, welcome to another Random Talk Sunday, and today I thought it would be interesting to briefly discuss the topic of laziness, or the whole concept surrounding laziness, and sort of my thoughts about it, because I think a lot of people like to complain about laziness, and I can understand that it is a vice, and it is kind of probably what we would consider one of the deadly sins. I believe they classify laziness as being sloth. Um, but personally, for me, I kind of have this sort of love-hate relationship with laziness. Um, and I like to think that there's a lot of people that do. Because on the one hand, I understand that, people not putting forth an effort, people not trying to better themselves, uh, people constantly feeling the need to have other people, you know, uh, provide for them, or feel like that they should take everything instead of trying to help out to get something. I understand that. I understand that whole impact that it has on society, and I understand that, yes, laziness in general is not a good trait to have. Um, but on the other hand, I feel that sometimes laziness is warranted when, I just think that, like, when you really look at the scheme of things, I understand people being lazy sometimes when they're constantly being pushed to do everything. And so I'm kind of against this whole extremist idea of you need to work hard constantly and you need to push however many hours and blah 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 blah, to basically work people to death. Like, I don't like that whole mindset. I think that just deters people to wanting to be lazy. Um, instead of actually putting forth the effort. If there was a little bit more of a balance between things, to being able to just relax and enjoy yourself, um, and while at the same time, still be active and productive. Like, I just think that there is a really healthy medium that can be had here. I don't personally feel like people should, work themselves to death. I'm totally against that whole mindset of you need to constantly, push yourself and just overwork, and just get no sleep, and just push yourself constantly, um, because that's the only way you can be successful in life. And I think we kind of push the whole idea of success and money and all of that as something that's ultimately valuable, when really at the end of the day, I think people are more valuable than how much money you've got in your pocket. And I mean, yeah, I think we should encourage people to work. I mean, I'm not for people sitting on the dole and doing nothing. Like, I think that's totally uncalled for. And yeah, we should give incentives for people to work, and for people to, do good things and be active, and be out and about. And I think the issue largely stems from the idea that, it really just depends on how you view laziness. Like, people probably have totally different definitions as to what laziness is. Some people who think that people who already are working are somehow lazy in some respect, for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe they're not as good of an employee as some other people might think, or I mean, there's obviously different ways into which you can classify if someone is being quote unquote lazy. But I think really what I think works the most is if you just provide incentive, but also realize that there doesn't need to be an overwork. There doesn't need to be an overkill to get ultimately where you need to go. Yes, it may take more work initially, but I don't think it should, you shouldn't, I don't think you should have to break your back or break your, I don't think you need to break your spirit or, ruin everything else in your life just for the sake of having, some kind of career. Like, I just think that whole mindset, that's very narrow-minded and is like, oh, all of you other people are worthless and I'm the boss and I'm the biggest and the best and greatest, I work the most and I deserve everything and blah 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 blah, and you're all just a bunch of lazy bums, doesn't really, help out when you're wanting to hire people. Um, so I think really what it all boils down to is I think if there is sort of a healthy balance of things, um, and you sort of let people just kind of do ultimately what they end up wanting to do at the end of the day. Like, they work for however much and then they are ultimately able to do something that they actually do enjoy doing. I think that's also a good incentive for people to not be lazy, is, you say you do this thing and then you will get this thing. It's that's how sort of the whole market works. Um, and I think really at the end of the day, um, you know, I feel like really when laziness is sort of a detriment is when you're putting other people sort of in a detriment, by not putting forth your effort, um, you're costing the company X, Y, and Z. You're not if you're not doing your job. I mean, I think that's really what it boils down to. And unfortunately, sometimes people take advantage of that, and then they don't put forth the effort that maybe that they should. Um, so, but I think at the end of the day, I think it really just all comes down to competence, and if the person just does what you tell them to do. you know um and I know there's obviously people that are more lazy than others. I know there's always going to be more people that will work harder than other people. That's just how the world works. It's not like we're all born with the incentive to, it's not like we can all just start a company. It's not like we can all just do certain things that other people are capable of doing. I think at the end of the day, uh, what really should be focused on is trying to provide people incentives, and then at the same time, trying to create some kind of balance, um, with being productive and being unproductive. Um, because if you work somebody to death, um, they're going to probably have a very miserable life. And probably don't want to work for you. And sometimes I think, people I think really do emphasize things that and work on things that just end up really don't, they're working, but it doesn't really end up producing anything. They just do all of this pointless work to maybe finally get where they need to get. So I mean, I'm one of those people who's like, yes, obviously people who work longer hours, who put in more work, should obviously get paid more. Totally not against that. But what I'm against is this whole idea of everybody needs to be on a certain kind of level. And everybody needs to kind of break their backs just so that they can support themselves. Obviously, I think everybody should work. Obviously, I think everybody should put in some effort. I'm not saying that anybody should be sitting at home doing nothing unproductive and getting anything. But what I think we should do is we should provide incentive and, hire the right people. There's some good people that could work in higher positions, but then don't. Maybe because they didn't start off, in a start off well, or they didn't have the money to go for higher education, or they wanted to maybe pay for or start work so that they could pay for to go on to higher education, or go into some high paying field to have some training too. And I just feel like we need to understand that not everybody is meant for a certain line of work. I mean, there's different people who have different interests and different people who can do certain things. Everybody can do something. It's just dependent on how what they can specifically do, and if that can lead to maybe more work and more incentive for people not to be lazy. And I think that's really what it all boils down to. I think people don't want to be lazy. I don't think people want to be sitting on the dole for however long. I really don't think laziness, um, in large part, is what people want to be doing for the rest of their lives. I really don't think people would want to be sitting in front of a television just watching mindlessly TV all day. I don't think that's the majority of people. But what I think needs to be done in order for people not to follow along that line of thinking is to provide some kind of incentive for them to, wanting to be productive, and knowing that their work is actually meaning something at the end of the day. And unfortunately, sometimes that's sometimes not the case. But again, I think really laziness, it's out of a lot of the other kinds of flaws that exist out there. I feel like although laziness obviously has its huge downsides, I think it's still one of those um, things that is it's not because people want to be lazy. It's just maybe they don't have the right incentives and they don't have the right mindset, and that's what's leading to the laziness. So I think it kind of all boils down to a variety of different reasons as to why certain people are lazy. But I think there's can be a balance here of working hard, working to get somewhere, working to find some thing that you can help with and you can contribute, but also realizing that there is that people should be, I think, allowed some downtime. People shouldn't constantly feel like they need to have their work life shoved down their throat constantly on a daily basis. I just think that whole mindset doesn't provide a good incentive for people either. Um, and I think eventually what ends up happening is sometimes a lot of people burn out. Um, and you know, it just overwhelms them. So I think really what I think is good is if there can be a lead up to having some balance. Like maybe you work a little bit harder when you're younger, and then eventually, you know, it becomes easier on you once you get older. And I think that's how eventually a lot of these things end up working out too, anyways. So again, I think that's really the direction that I think things can, or at least I think should go in with when it comes to laziness. Is it's not, oh, it's not horrible unless it's in moderation. Similar to a lot of other vices too, like maybe greed. Like there's maybe such a thing as good greed of wanting to have money to provide for other people or for yourself so that you can survive. And then there's bad greed where you take advantage of people and you use people and you do whatever in order to get money, like you steal or whatnot. So obviously there's another side of the coin, I think, always when it comes to these things, and it's the same thing with laziness. So I think really that's what's the ultimate uh, thing that the ultimate thing that I think can ultimately be done is to provide people incentive, but at the same time recognize that not everybody is going to put in the same amount of work, the same amount of hours, and everybody has different needs, and some people don't need to have an excessive amount of money. Some people don't, feel like that they need to um, constantly, have a huge amount of money to feel successful. You know, I mean, I think really what it should boil down to is people's willingness to work, and I think the willingness to work um, should propel people into not being lazy. And when people are lazy, they are lazy because they are more so tired, and not because they are unincentivized to do certain things. So really that's what I think it all boils down to. I mean, I know there's some people who have different viewpoints as to what really laziness is, or what you could even classify as lazy or whatnot, but I personally feel that if we provide people the right incentives, if we encourage people um, to pursue work, then we'll decrease the amount of people being lazy, and we'll decrease the amount of people not doing anything. So I think that's really what it all boils down to. But realizing that not everybody is going to put in the exact same amount of work, and that everybody is different, and everybody has their own way of how they approach certain things. But yeah, at the same time, I think we should encourage people to work hard, but I think at the same time, I don't think we should treat work as everything, and realize that uh, that your work life, it could come and go, and at the end of the day, it's just important that you put in effort, and that you try to do better and whatnot. I think that's more of what we should focus on, rather than the dollar value associated with somebody, or the amount of um, uh, skills, or what profession that person's in. We should just try to encourage people to not be lazy, and eventually that will lead to less laziness. And when people are lazy, it's not necessarily damaging anything. It's not like it's harming society. So yeah, I think that's really ultimately all I can say though about this topic. However, if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care.